BBC Radio Devon just coming up to 12:09. Going to be talking to Gerald Weaver, a man who's had an amazing political career in the American system of politics. But he's also turned his talent to writing a great book, The First Gentleman. We'll be talking to him in a few moments' time about a brilliant idea and something which could actually happen. The First Gentleman. We've always had a First Lady. We could have a First Bloke. Well, they say that life imitates art, and my next guest is just about to publish a thriller about America's first female president. And as you may have heard in the news, overnight Hillary Clinton has been chosen as the first woman from a major party to run for president. Gerald Weaver has already been a very successful run a very successful congressional campaign. He's been chief of staff in the House of Representatives and a lobbyist, so he knows Washington inside out, and I'm very glad to say that he joins me now. Gerald, thank you very much indeed for taking the time, but in the wrong country at the moment. Things must be, well, quite interesting back home in the States.
Oh, they are. The Democratic Convention, I think, has been quite a big show, and there's a lot of interest and support back home, but I think at least someone has to come over here and help explain it to you all.
Well, this is it, because I was only discussing this with my wife last night, and I do not know the difference, and I'm sorry, most British political animals would not know the difference between Congress, House of Representatives, Congressmen. What is the structure? Is it like our House of Lords and Houses of Parliament?
A bit. I mean, we call them all Congress, but congressmen generally applies to the House of Representatives, and those are individuals who represent a constituency, much like your House of Commons. Each constituency is about 500,000 people, and it's stretched across the United States in a very representative fashion. The senators are elected 2 per state, which means a very small state like Rhode Island will have exactly the same representation in the Senate as a large state like California will have, so it becomes a much more deliberative, slow-moving body.
Right. So senators, are they represented? Sorry, is it 2 senators per state or 2 congressmen? 2
per state. Well, you'll have a state like Nevada, which will have 1 or 2 congressmen and then 2 senators, or Alaska, which will have 1 congressman and 2 senators, which is sort of the reverse, and then you'll have Pennsylvania, which will have 23 congressmen and 2 senators. So.
And in general, if I'm right in saying whoever is the leading power within the White House, the power within the Senate is normally the opposite power, the opposite political issue?
It goes either way, and throughout the 70s and much of the time during the war, there was the one party controlled both the House and Senate and the White House. But what often happens in our system is there's sort of a reaction against the party in the White House, and many times in midterm elections, the other party will take over the House or Senate. And we have that now. We have a Democratic president and a Republican House and Senate.
Yeah, we tend to have, when our local government elections normally do not reflect whoever is in politics within the Houses of Parliament. But look, let's get back to this book, The First Gentleman. First of all, how long did you think about this book? When did you start to plan this thriller?
I started it right after I finished my first book, so that would have been 2013. I actually finished it in 2014, and my primary purpose in writing the book is I had seen that for a long time there was a cultural, social, political orthodoxy that was never, ever really upended at the national political level, and I thought there'd be some value to that. And I also wanted to sort of hasten what I think are the evolving gender roles in America.
Has a woman ever gone this far before? Obviously, now we have Hillary in place. Well, she has been chosen. But why has there never been another attempt from a female politician to get this far?
I think there are 2 reasons, and one is that the pathway is fraught with all kinds of obstacles. Sexism and, I guess to an extent, misogyny require that she be very, very careful, because there's waiting in the wings this natural antagonism. So the pathway is difficult. And then after that, which is more functional, is that there have just been very few women that have been disqualified, and she's eminently qualified.
But this book has an interesting twist and turn here. I mean, the first gentleman. It says here, it effectively shines a light on a shadowy world of US politics. Now, you have been at the core of this. Is there a shadowy world? Have you ever been manipulated yourself or been involved in something that you suddenly look back on and think, hang on, that's not the way it should have gone?
I have to say that I tried to assiduously avoid that sort of thing, and it does happen. And politics in America is a bit murkier than people know. The effect of money, and particularly coming from the far right, and the way that money is hidden, weirdly in tax-exempt organizations and things like that, is not very well known. But it's the reason we have the Tea Party. It's the reason that the Republicans have taken over the Senate, and it's the reason why Hillary has to be very moderate, and also why Donald Trump had to pick a super conservative running mate.
Well, we sit back and we watch the news every night, and the way that the politics is developing in America, and there's a certain element in this country that cannot believe that Mr. Trump has got this far. The groundswell of opinion. Can you? I'll ask you to plump. There's no legal reason why we can't. I mean, who do you think's going to win?
I have to say, I believe it's a bit of a toss-up. I think Hillary probably has an edge, and she's going to get a bump out of this campaign. But I think there are several reasons that Trump has a tremendous chance, and one is that there's about $800 million in dark money waiting to be spent against her. And then there's also, that hidden power of sexism. You had your Brexit, I think, and people underestimated the power of that reaction. So I think it's easy to underestimate the power of sexism. And I also think that he makes a great deal of hay simply by being unorthodox, whether it's truthful or sincere or anything. There are people out there that are just against the way things are, and I don't think that can be underestimated either.
Okay, well, whoever's got the biggest bank account seems to win. I'm sorry to say, but within the judicial system in America, this may be a misnomer, but whoever's got the most money seems to be the most innocent. Would you agree with that statement?
I think that's probably less true in the criminal justice system, where basically it's so skewed against the defendant that almost everybody's guilty. But
Right.
But certainly the wealthy people have a better chance to get off. And in terms of civil suits, it's not uncommon that the party with the best, who can afford the best legal representation, will win.
Okay. Well, the first gentleman, it's out now. I've got to say, if Hillary does get in, I just can't see Bill walking around changing the curtains and doing the wallpaper. Is that a sexist thing to say? I mean,
I don't know, or being a fashion plate like Jackie Kennedy, or entertaining the visiting head of state's spouse like. Yeah. But I can't either. But I think he has a real chance to redefine gender roles. He sort of started down that path last night, didn't he? He said he married his best friend, and he'd asked her many times to marry him, and that she was the best thing that ever happened to him, which is all very supportive statements. And I think that people do not question that Clinton is a manly man, so for him to take that role, I think is interesting. But you're right. For one thing, he's Clinton, and another thing, he's a former president. So I think they're going to give him a very defined role, and he's probably going to be ambassador to the Court of St. James, or ambassador to the UN, or Supreme Court justice, or Secretary of State, or something like that.
So there is a defined role for, in the past, the First Lady. I know Jackie Kennedy, she totally redesigned the interior of the White House. She was the one that looked and said, look, this really does need to be spruced up. I mean, was that carried on through, just trying to think my history, Lady Bird Johnson, and on to Betty Ford, and so on and so on?
Yes, but Betty Ford once said that the uselessness of the cause, or the safeness of the cause, which the First Lady had to espouse, was constitutionally mandated. Of course, that was an irony. There's no place in the Constitution for the First Lady's role. Betty Ford championed the fight against breast cancer and women's rights. Lady Bird Johnson beautified public spaces in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And even Michelle Obama, who's a high-powered Princeton-educated lawyer, looked at the situation and decided to fight childhood obesity and support gardening when she could have easily taken a substantive role.
It's an interesting and fascinating situation. Can you stay with us for a few moments, Gerald?
Certainly.
The First Gentleman. It's a book that's out there. Melinda Sherman for president. It's a great idea. It could actually happen, especially over the last 24 hours. Hillary Clinton has been chosen as the first woman for a major party to run for president, which would make her husband the first gentleman. 23 BBC Radio Devon. The First Gentleman by Gerald Weaver. It's out now. It takes a look at a situation which could well happen. And I'm very glad to say that the author is with us at the moment, over in this country promoting the book. Gerald, sorry, I'm assuming that you do live in America and just this is a flying visit.
Yes, it is. Although I could see myself living in England. I really love the place.
Oh, really?
Oh, and I love your literature too.
You're sort of a man. Who would you point to in British literature? You would say, actually, yes, he's a damn fine chap.
It's funny you should say that, Fitz. One of the fourth or fifth elements of this book is that it's a homage to Charles Dickens. I mean, if you're a Dickens scholar or a freak, you would read this book and say, oh, that's Little Dorrit, or that's Our Mutual Friend, or that's Little Curiosity Shop. If you haven't read it, you'll enjoy it just as well. But I chose that not because of my love for Dickens, but also because if you look at creatures like Donald Trump or Boris Johnson, they look positively Dickensian, don't they?
Yes. There's a touch of, I'm just trying to think of, not Uriah Heep. Uriah Heep was a man who may have had the same hairline, but he certainly wasn't quite so, ever so humble.
I think of Bill Sykes or Quilp, the really horrible villains.
Yes, exactly. You're a bad man. You're a bad man. Actually, I was just trying to think, should Trump get him, she wouldn't be the first lady. She's the third lady, isn't he? He's been married 3 times, has he not?
Some people would say she's no lady, but I don't want to know that. She's
just a moment. Just a moment. The BBC solicitor. Did you get that one? Yes,
she certainly would be an interesting first lady. The first one having ever posed on a tiger rug in British GQ.
Really, I must look that up on the bounds of research, you must say. The book is out now, Gerald. First of all, this has got to be turned into a film. And I know that's probably not why you've written it. Every author suddenly thinks, ka-ching. But this has a great potential.
I hate to say that I agree with you, Fitz, but it does. I mean, my female candidate, Melinda Sherman, is a decorated war veteran. She's a little bit unbalanced emotionally, and she's has a strange family. Her mother's kind of crazy. Her brother is a flamboyant actor, and she doesn't fit the cautious mold that Hillary absolutely had to fit. And I hope she's the sort of female candidate of the future, and she's sort of entertaining, and her relationship to her husband's entertaining because he raises the kids and he runs her campaign and he serves her many uses. So.
Have the Clintons been sent a copy of this? Do they know of its existence?
That's another excellent question, Fitz, because I'm good friends with Calvin and Janet Hill, and he's an American football legend, and she was Hillary's roommate at Wellesley. And they're at the convention this day, and Janet has 2 copies of my book, and she said if she has the opportunity, she was going to hand one to Bill.
Oh, brilliant. I would love to see that moment.
I would too.
I can just see him turning to the end. Hang on, does he live? Does he live? Does he live? The situation is going to get more and more complex with your political system. First of all, it was actually my son that asked me, when do they go to the polls? When do you vote for the next president?
The first Tuesday of November, and I can't really tell you what day that is, but that's always when it is.
And you will be back in the States to put your mark?
Oh, I will be voting often and early.
Right. Okay, just to make sure. The book is out now. I look forward to flicking through it. It's in front of me now, and I'm going to take this home to shove by my bedside in November. If it goes that way, I will then look in our stage and film directory over here to see that Gerald Weaver has signed one of the biggest film contracts of his life. I wish you every luck with that.
Thank you for that sentiment, Fitz. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's published by, I've got to get the details because people will then complain. Who's it published by?
London Wall Publishing.
London Wall Publishing, a rollicking good read. His prose is sharp, cute, something lyrical, and often surprisingly funny. That comes from The Big Issue. What a great way of looking at the book. Gerald, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
I appreciate it, and thank you, Fitz.